Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if the way we categorize people might be hiding important problems? Well, today we're diving into some fascinating research that asks just that. Imagine you are trying to solve a problem, but all the information you have is really fuzzy. That is kind of what we're talking about today. Scientists are looking at how grouping people into really broad racial categories might be making it harder to see and solve important issues, especially for Asian Americans and Middle Eastern or North African Americans, or MENA Americans as they're often called. We all use labels to understand the world, right? Race is one of those labels. People use it to describe themselves and others, and it is a big part of who someone is and how they see their life experiences. But here is the catch. Sometimes these labels are so broad that they can hide huge differences inside the group. Think about it like this. If I tell you I am going to give you a box of fruit, you might expect apples, oranges, bananas. But if I then tell you I am giving you a box of red fruit, you might miss out on the bananas and oranges entirely. That is what can happen with broad racial categories. Let's take Asian Americans as an example. When most people think of Asian Americans, they might picture East Asians like Chinese, Korean, or Japanese people. And to raise this whole model minority idea that Asians are super smart and do really well in school and work, on the surface this sounds good, right? But this broad label and this stereotype actually hides a ton of diversity and different challenges within the Asian American community. For instance, while some Asian groups do very well on average, others like Laotian and Cambodian Americans actually have lower college graduation rates than the national average. That's a pretty big difference, right? If we only look at the big Asian American number, we completely miss these disparities. It is like saying all fruit is the same when some are sweet and some are sour. It is not just education. Health is another big one. The broad Asian American label can hide serious health differences. For example, Filipino Americans have a high risk and mortality rate for prostate and breast cancer, while Chinese Americans generally have a lower risk. South Asian Americans face a higher risk of heart disease, and even something like diabetes shows up differently. Filipino and South Asians are more likely to have diabetes than Chinese Americans. If doctors and policymakers are just looking at one big Asian American number, they might not be creating the right health programs or screenings for the specific groups who need them the most. Now, let's flip to another group, Middle Eastern and North African Americans, or MENA Americans. This is a huge region with tons of different cultures and backgrounds. But for a long time, on official forms like the US Census, people from these diverse backgrounds have been told to check the box for white. This white classification might seem neutral, but it actually erases MENA identities and hides a lot of important experiences. While they might be legally classified as white, many Americans don't see them that way. They often face prejudice and discrimination, sometimes being stereotyped as dangerous terrorists. This is a real paradox. They're invisible legally, but hypervisible in negative stereotypes. And just like with Asian Americans, this erasure in data collection means we miss vital health information. MENA Americans have higher risks for things like heart disease and certain metabolic issues. But if their data is lumped in with white people or just not collected properly, how can healthcare systems understand these specific risks and create targeted care? It's hard for doctors to help patients if they don't even know the full picture of their health needs. This also affects safety. Hate crimes against MENA Americans are a real problem, but without a distinct category, it is really hard to track these incidents accurately. How can we combat discrimination and hate if we can't even reliably count who is being targeted? Data disaggregation basically means breaking down those broad labels into smaller, more specific groups. It's about looking closer. So instead of just Asian American, we look at Indian American, Vietnamese American, Filipino American, and so on. And instead of just white, we need to recognize MENA Americans as their own distinct group. The first big step, according to the researchers, is better data collection. This means making sure that the forms we use, from school applications to medical history surveys to the census itself, offer options that allow people to accurately identify themselves. Many Asian Americans feel a stronger connection to their specific ethnic background than to the broader Asian label. And as we saw, many MENA Americans don't feel white, and they want a box to check that reflects who they are. When people are given the option to self-identify with a category they actually feel represents them, they are more likely to provide that information. This isn't just about making people feel good. It is about getting accurate data. When communities feel seen and understood, they're more likely to participate. And accurate data is crucial for making sure resources like funding for schools and healthcare programs go to the places and people who need them most. Imagine a school district not getting enough funding because a large group of students wasn't counted properly, because the form didn't offer the right options. Next, they talk about data analysis. It's not enough to just collect the detailed data. We have to actually use it in a way that respects that detail. Sometimes for simplicity, people might lump groups back together. For example, they might group Asian students with white students to show disparities between other groups. But this defeats the purpose of disaggregation. The researchers say we should avoid grouping Asian and white Americans. And we definitely need to keep MENA Americans separate from white Americans when we crunch the numbers. They also highlight something called intersectionality. This means that people have multiple identities that all work together. Someone isn't just Asian. They might be a Cambodian woman, or an Indian immigrant, or a young MENA student. Understanding how these different parts of someone's identity intersect is super important for understanding their unique experiences and challenges. For example, Southeast Asian women might face specific barriers in STEM fields that wouldn't be visible if we only looked at broad Asian American or female categories. Interpreting the data correctly is another challenge. The researchers point out something called essentialism. This is the mistaken idea that racial differences are natural or biological. For example, some doctors might wrongly believe that black patients feel less pain than white patients because of some inherent biological difference. This is not true and leads to serious medical biases. Similarly, the model minority stereotype for some Asian groups can lead to essentialist thinking. People might wrongly attribute their success to some built-in intelligence rather than recognizing the complex history, immigration policies, and socio-economic factors that have shaped their journeys. This can unfairly blame other groups for not achieving the same things, and it also leaves out the many Asian Americans who don't fit that successful image. To avoid these biases, they suggest working closely with community members. Listening to the people most affected by these categories is key to understanding the data and interpreting it in a way that is fair and accurate. Finally, data protection. Racial data is sensitive. History shows us that this kind of information can be misused, like during the internment of Japanese Americans or the increased surveillance of Arab and South Asian communities after 9/11s. However, the researchers are clear this doesn't mean we shouldn't collect this data. In fact, for many minority groups, being accurately counted is a civil rights issue. It is about officially documenting their existence and their struggles. The key is to protect this data rigorously and be transparent about how it will be used to inform policies that help people. So, what is the big takeaway? The way we label and group people matters. Broad racial labels can hide important diversity and disparities, making it harder to address critical issues in education, health, and civil rights. By disaggregating data, by looking closer at specific ethnic groups within broader categories like Asian American, and by recognizing groups like MENA Americans distinctly, we can gain a much clearer picture of reality. This research is crucial for creating better policies and interventions. It is about ensuring that everyone gets the support and recognition they deserve. The 2030 census is set to include a MENA category, which is a big step. But as the authors suggest, we can and should implement these disaggregated approaches much sooner across all sorts of institutions. And my take on this, I think this is such an important topic. We are complex beings, and simple categories often fail to capture that complexity. This research shines a light on how critical it is to have accurate, nuanced data. It's not just about statistics, it's about people's lives, their health, their education, their safety. The study's strength is in highlighting these hidden disparities and providing actionable recommendations for improvement. A limitation is that it focuses on just two major groups as examples, and of course, many other groups likely face similar issues with broad categorization. Future research could explore the effectiveness of specific disaggregated data collection methods in different institutional settings, or delve deeper into the intersectional experiences of individuals within these groups. How do we truly ensure that data serves humanity, rather than obscuring it? What do you all think about this? Have you ever felt that a broad label didn't quite fit you? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give us a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more deep dives into the science of us. We'll see you next time.